Hi, it's Eva again. I wake up ambitious people like you and dare them to be great. And today we're gonna talk a lot with executive coach Katrien Nuyts. As an executive coach, Katrien guides executive leaders and their teams to greatness. And how she does that, she'll give you a sneak peek of that today. Next to executive coach, Katrien is also my mom, and I'm really blessed with that because she is really a walking encyclopedia when it comes to everything evolving around leadership, coaching, dynamics within teams. And I have her on speed dial. I call her a lot for advices and to see how she would resolve things. And I want to give you access to some of her brain, of her knowledge today in this conversation as well. So, welcome, Katrien.
Oh, thank you. What an intro.
Of course. So, we're going to discuss 4 things today.
Okay.
So, we're going to talk about the challenges of executive teams.
Yeah.
The listeners will learn how you can spot as an executive leader or a team that you are or aren't using your full potential.
Okay.
Then I'm going to also ask you about concrete tips that you can give to these executive leaders on how they can then activate their potential. And then finally, often the most juicy part, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions about how you used to block your potential maybe back in the days and how you overcame that so that our listeners can learn from that as well.
Okay.
So typically the people that I interview, they have this sense of purpose. They want to create an impact in this world, and they really believe that they can create a change. So what change do you want to create in this world? What's the impact that you want to create by doing what you do?
Okay. Yeah. The world is big, eh?
The world is big.
Now, what I want to achieve with working with these executive teams it's quite simple. It's the fact that these teams work well and that they work well together.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot at stake. If we say executive teams, that's a terminology, a word for, in fact, every team that has as a core task the steering, the guidance for the entire business, the organization. It is there the difference with operational, functional divisions or teams. So they oversee the whole, and they have a lot of impact on the whole organization, people that work there, society, economy. And I want them to be at full potential, as you say so. To the extent that they can take that leader responsibility together.
Yeah.
And if I say responsibility, I do not refer so much to the heavy sense of the word. It's your responsibility.
Yeah.
Yes, of course, it's their responsibility. That is. But with the teams, I refer to the dynamic part of the word. It's the response ability. So that these teams working together develop more repertoire, more ability to respond to complexity.
Yeah.
And that they do this more like as one identity, the team. So how would this team decide? What would this team do about it? More like connected, aligned.
Yeah.
And that they dare to doubt also.
Yeah.
That's not something that comes in mind, but I have seen recently the film Conclave.
Okay.
And that's a wonderful film about leadership, I think. And there the Pope is dead.
Yeah.
And then Cardinal Lawrence needs to organize the conclave. And he is the leader of the conclave, so they have to choose a Pope. And it's full of intrigues and last-minute events, and then certainly something happens that nobody knew, and some want to be Pope, and some say no. It's a little bit like business.
Yeah.
And then in the beginning, he gives a speech. And he does a call to showing up as a Pope. I hope we choose a Pope who will stand there and show up and be the Pope. That's his role. That's the responsibility.
Yeah.
And then he also says, I hope we choose a Pope who will doubt.
All right.
And then you have to see the film. It's a wonderful film about leadership, but then, in fact, that wisdom of knowing that there are many possible options and that there is not one right or wise answer and that the others are wrong, and then doubt and check and doubt again and go anyhow and lead and disappoint people and support each other and strive for longer term goals. In order to do that well, you need to be aligned, supported, purposeful also as a team.
Yeah.
And I think if we can reach that, then the world might be a little bit a better place or an island of sanity there or so. I don't know. Yeah.
All right. Okay. So I hear creating alignment, togetherness, but also
a team identity.
A team identity, an environment where doubt is also welcomed and seen as something valuable rather than everyone thinking that they need to know the answer. These are all aspects that you want to help arise.
And it asks for safety also, rather than the one-liner decisions and everyone knows it on their own. And I want really a wise ensemble of people.
Okay, all right. That's a lot of
steering an organization.
Yeah, that steer an organization. It's a lot of different elements that need to be built. Mm-hmm. So how do you do that to help contribute to that safe ensemble of people that can steer organizations in the best possible way?
How do I do that? I facilitate.
Mm-hmm.
I create contexts. I create the best conditions for them. I guide a process.
Mm-hmm.
So, in fact, they do it.
Yeah.
They do it and everything is there. And I create the conditions that it can emerge.
Mm-hmm.
What has to be seen, discussed, understood in the working together.
Yeah.
So I do quite some things in order to make them come to that point. I have a repertoire also in experience, in tools, in exercises, in silence, in questions.
Mm-hmm.
In order to make sure you're never sure, in order to facilitate that what is there with them, because in general it's there already between them, can emerge.
Okay.
And I speak truth also.
Yeah, I know that.
I speak truth in the sense that I just observe and share with them what I see them do, what I hear them say. I work with what they do and say.
Yeah.
Because often I think at that level, leaders sometimes lack pure, almost blunt feedback.
Yeah.
Sometimes they are in a kind of echo chamber because people tend to tell to leaders what they think maybe the leader wishes to hear. Then the people who's not giving the good feedback sabotages him or herself. So there's quite some self-sabotage around these leaders.
Okay.
Now, sometimes also these leaders do not permit themselves to really hear or see what is being said and feedbacked.
Yeah.
And then they sabotage themselves.
Okay.
For example, by thinking, oh, I don't have the answer, so I can't take this. We don't know yet.
Yeah.
What would it be if I would say, I don't know, what a good question. We have to think about it.
That's a big one I see coming back as well. That indeed leaders, that they believe I need to know, and otherwise I just need to pretend.
If the team works well together, then they can tackle that.
Yeah.
But then it has to be safe between them also.
Okay.
But if you speak about sabotage, that's already something that I try then to take along.
Okay. And because sometimes people don't dare to give feedback or to be honest to the leader. I can imagine that for you, because they think there's too much at stake. I think for you, sometimes there's also a lot at stake. If these leaders don't like to hear that they can just say, we quit the collaboration. So what do you do or to speak that through the way that you do it in a razor sharp way and not be scared of the reaction.
Yeah, that is a challenge. I must say, I worked a lot prior times with a colleague. We did a lot of co-facilitation, and he gave me a metaphor, Dimitri.
Okay.
You know him. And he said, Katrien, you throw like a small stone into the water, and then it rimples, and then you work with the rimples. I sometimes have the impression that I throw blocks. And that is my challenge, to make that, to dose the tone, the when, that is, how do I do it to not being afraid? Yeah, if I'm afraid, then I don't show up.
Yeah.
I would like everyone in the process to show up.
Yes.
And if I start with self-sabotaging, by not showing up, by playing small, by trying to please, then we can better go home. And we're just making money maybe for a while, but no. And it doesn't always makes friends. Sometimes I say, I'm going to say something that you might not like to hear at first.
Okay. Yeah.
Or so.
Yeah.
Or more like what I see, what I experience is just my experience. I don't put it there maybe as the big truth.
Yeah.
But I can say like, I wonder how this would come over, or but that's my challenge. Yeah. But if I start being afraid, I have to sell ice cream. Steve Jobs said that, if you want to please everyone, sell ice cream.
Indeed. Yeah, it's something you also told me when I started off as a coach, is your role as a coach is not to be liked.
No.
It's not it's not part of being a coach that you want to be liked, because
you have
then
to connect.
You have to
You have to be concerned, connect, but not to be liked.
Indeed. Yeah.
They don't need to hate you, but you know when you worked well. Also, when someone leaves the session saying, I don't have to see you in the next 3 weeks again. And sometimes people say, oh, it was nice. It was so nice. And then I thought, no, it was nothing. Yeah.
It's you kind of measure the success on the impact it created.
What happened?
What happened, rather than on how much they like you and how much they then thank you.
Is there movement towards insights, towards changed relationships between them? Is there feedback that makes them, that can help them do what has to be done? There is so much at stake.
Yeah. No, indeed. And typically these teams don't have that much time either to keep talking and talking and talking. So you need quite some
balance,
disruptive eye-openers sometimes to get them moving.
It's often very smart people who go very quickly.
Yeah,
they
exactly.
think quickly, they come, cut the crap.
Cut the crap,
So then I cut the crap.
All right, so that's how you do that. Speaking your truth and really being present to facilitate the change.
And I have quite some experience in seeing like how systems work, system dynamics, group dynamics, to have certain tools or exercises that I know that can create movement. So it's not just like, it is really also, there is a script, there is a frame, and then I'm flexible because I work with what I do at the moment.
Yeah.
And I respond to what happens.
Okay. Yeah, with truth.
Yeah.
All right. And so when you work with these teams, what are the 3 main challenges that you see coming back over and over again that are quite universal for executive teams?
Well, there are many, many reasons, of course, why these teams can decide to seek for guidance or help or support. But things that come back in generic, I would say first is in the response that individual team members give to the question, what is your first team? To which team do you belong first?
Yeah.
In these teams, besides the CEO, every member steers, leads, has also an operational, functional responsibility.
Yeah.
That has to work. Huh? And they have their teams there too.
Yeah.
And sometimes when, for example, young executives are promoted up from the team they were peers in, maybe, to leading that team and then becoming a member of the exec team that they are part of that bigger team, it can require some, even, I call it identity work. Who am I now?
Yeah.
Not longer the peer. I'm the boss, sort of. And then I will have to, that's a little bit in between. And then, sometimes the good for the organization asks stepping down or stepping back or giving in from certain parts of the organization. The exec team, in principle, is more, if it works well, than the sum of all the individuals in it. It has, it achieves. It has to achieve more. It has to do the things that no one operational, functional level can do alone in the organization. So what they do, nobody can do it alone, because often it cuts through choices, and some have to give in. So that can be sometimes a challenge, and therefore it is so important that executive team is really an aligned, connected group of people who know what they strive for, the result that they strive for, that what is on the long run, that there is enough appeal for them to be brave and stand between, go back to their teams sometimes and disappoint them.
Yeah. Okay.
So there it's important to have a good team identity at the exec level.
Yeah.
But it is at all levels. I mean, for the moment I'm working with an executive team where in that organization almost everyone in the board is changing.
Okay.
And it was professional, and now it is even a step up. The board now is even more asking for professionalism, alignment, long-term. It is really a board that takes the role as the board.
Yeah.
So then the CEO is in between, like, oh my God, yes, she can handle. She's a very smart, quick lady. And then she has the team along. And the team has to follow. So for this team, for example, that's a gift that the board is so demanding.
Yeah.
Because it's a gift, because now they are forced to really stand up as a team.
Yeah.
And to have one identity vis-a-vis the board.
Yeah.
So what do they do now? We worked together quite a lot. They have a habit, and that is, if any one of them has to present to the board, they dry run.
With each other.
They dry run. So they dry run, dear board, this is what I have to present, and then they give feedback, they challenge each other, and so the team grows.
Yeah.
But also for the CEOs, some people grow quicker, some less. It's always... those disappointing people choosing between one good and another good.
Okay. All right. So to recap,
that's the first challenge, indeed, I see. So which team?
What's the first team? And what's the first team that you most often, that you see very often, that executive leaders choose their operational team as first team, because that's where they make things happen and where the action is and where their loyalty often is, rather than the executive team itself, where actually the most
where they should be,
where the biggest synergy should be created in order to steer that organization in the best possible way. Yeah.
And in that sense, they also, as in terms of identity work, they have to change from executor to context setter.
Okay.
In their operational team, they were maybe the more executing and in the operations, which they know that and that's safe. And then now they suddenly become a context setter.
Okay.
Where the operations can work well. And also they have another role, a completely other role, because now in the exec team, they are where the power is.
Yeah.
So they can serve their teams, their operational teams differently by making things happen at a higher level that the operational team cannot have access to. But if that leader is not going to stand there and show up and identify with that role, then he's just one of the groups. And then you have exec teams where the meeting is about 2 weekly reporting on successes or what they have done, but that doesn't work.
No, indeed. All right, interesting. Good.
Yeah.
So that's a big one.
Yeah. The second, you asked 3, is then, I think, the interrelational between the members of the exec team, to a sense that they build really benevolence trust that's based on intent. I must be sure that you have the best intentions with me, and you have to be sure that I have the best intentions with you.
Okay.
It's good to have, that's the relational benevolence trust on the intention.
Yeah.
It is key to have results cleared out, roles cleared out, who has the power, who does what, the tasks clear. This is the frame, and that is essential. And then what happens between people, that is then that glue that I would call benevolence trust, where also it becomes safe to dare to doubt, for example.
Okay. Yeah.
And often we get stuck with the trust on the competence.
Okay.
I can trust a finance guy that he knows everything about finance, that he will run the numbers, and that it will be top.
Yeah.
Check off. But do I trust the other person when the going gets tough? And when we show, where we doubt, where we have to take risk together, that when it goes wrong, because if you take risk, it can go wrong, that no one will say, yeah, but I told that it was a bad idea.
Yeah.
Or I said so. And how do you build that kind of trust? That's by doing things together that are shared, by being in a situation of interdependence.
Yeah.
So these teams also have to create and dare to go into the shared projects that they're in the same boat, they go to tough times, they make decisions, they're together in projects that are transversal. And they have to build that trust. Oh, you say that that you're going to live up to it. You're in time. You do it. I tell you something in secrecy. It doesn't come back.
Okay.
You can hold. You can hold promise. That is.
And is it then something you would recommend? So imagine now that a leader is listening in, and that there are not really projects like these, that they install certain projects in order to collaborate?
In general, these kinds of level of teams have projects.
Okay.
It can be sometimes they have to guide an organization through a merger. They have to guide organizations to transformation that is challenged and triggered by, for example, changes in the market or by law. So in general, they have, in this complexity, they have things at stake.
Okay.
If you see now, for example, what's happening in hospitals, how hospitals are by government asked to more work together, bundle specialist services. I can imagine that then teams have to decide on who is still going to do these and these interventions. Where do we put the expensive machine for the examinations? So it's in general, they don't have to think of a project.
Yeah.
In general, there are challenges enough in the market with clients, with trends in society. In general, there is a lot that they have to respond to, and that they have to say, okay, but we were doing well. We had good strategy, we were wise.
Mm-hmm.
And now with what happens, we won't make the future in the same way of doing.
Okay.
So in general, the challenge is there.
The challenge is there. But
Sometimes they create it also themselves by deciding, for example, to optimize. But in general, executive teams have projects. But they have to be able to step in.
Yeah.
With the mindset of we're in the same boat.
Yeah.
And what we strive for is bigger than the sum of every operational division being happy about,
we have our numbers and our KPIs.
There is something that has to change then.
Yeah.
And the old will no longer necessarily always exist.
Yeah. When you talk about that trust and the benevolence trust between people, it reminds me of a book, The Speed of Trust by Covey, the son of the big Covey. And there, because trust, it's sometimes difficult to measure it, and that's often why people don't track it or have their full focus on it. But so in The Speed of Trust, Covey, he kind of cuts trust into different components, of which competence
is the basic, and then you have the benevolence, the intent, and then you have the integrity trust. That is more the kind of trust that I hope that we all have home. For example, that people will, no matter what, also if the going gets tough, will consequently keep choosing for the relationship, for what's at stake. I heard someone speak about that as trust from the East and trust from the West. In the West, we're good in the trust from the head, competence, and then the East is more like the trust from the heart.
The values, the integrity.
But both are important, and it is the trust on the intention and on the benevolence that brings them in the possibility to doubt and that's a third challenge that you asked, is to go to decision taking.
That's a big one that I hear very often. Indeed,
decision taking is also very special, and I'm going to quote Jesse Segers. I work also together with Ginkgo consultants, and he phrases this well. He says, of course, leaders are smart. It's not about choosing between the obvious right or good decision and the obviously bad decision. They can do that. The complexity asks that leaders constantly choose between various goods, between the one good with consequences and the other good with consequences. And what would wisdom do? And then doubt, see the options, see the consequences of each good decision, which is a good decision in a certain way, and then disappoints people in another way. And the other is then also a good decision in another way and disappoints people in another way. And then decide and stick to it to the extent that you bear the consequences also. Because if I see sabotage there, what is sabotage mechanisms, for example, that people or teams do not stick to their decisions. And that is not because they cannot decide. It is often because they cannot, I always say, eat your plate. They cannot take the decision through to all the consequences. And then it becomes sometimes a bad decision because it is not executed in the fullest. In the coaching practice, I sometimes see people struggling with choices, which is human. And then sometimes I see a person stepping out with like kind of wonderful decision. And I say, wow. But then they compromise because, of course, there is always what was not there and wanting it all. And then it becomes a lousy execution. Sometimes someone takes a decision that I say, wow, that is a challenge. That's brave. And then they go for it. And I say, wow, who could expect that? So it's more in the way it's not the decision you take. It's in the way you live it.
Yeah. And you see it through. That's interesting. And
well, that's that's what I see.
Yeah. So if people then don't stick to their decision in the execution, what do you think makes them change?
Because there's a bigger win somewhere.
There's a bigger win somewhere.
Yeah. If we don't do what we should do, and you say, I should do that, and you know it. It's in the head. And then if you don't stick to it, what are you not willing to lose?
Mm-hmm.
What's the consequence that you do not want? That's very interesting. What is even more valuable, more precious that I have by sabotaging?
Yeah. It's always self-sabotage has good and bad consequences. So it always has a pain and a gain. And indeed, always changing your decision, it kind of gives you the impression that you always have the best thing, but in the end, you end up with nothing.
Yeah, and it can give you the impression that you're doing lots of things.
Yeah. Exactly. And people like that.
We're busy.
People like to be busy.
Yeah.
This. Okay, good. So that's the three main things you typically see go wrong in executive teams. And
I said challenges.
Or challenges.
That's what a generic. It's about a team. It's about what's happening between people, and it's about what they decide and execute and how.
Yeah, and how the relationship there is.
There are many challenges, but if you want 3.
You already made the distinction a little bit. It's okay. You already made the distinction a little bit between the teams and the leaders. But if you would go look at the leaders themselves within these executive teams, what are the challenges there? What do you notice?
Well, the leaders, in a certain way, at a micro level, have the same challenges. They also have the challenge of choosing, deciding. So that's not so split. But what the leader, I think, individually has to do, and that the team can't do for the leader, is to, for himself as a person, stay in balance, keep balance, develop. It's now we're in the adult development, in fact. Know yourself, take time to reflect about your experiences, learn from your experience, know where you come from, know your history. That's something that is also for teams important. I can come back to that later. But I always phrase it in a few questions. Who do you want to be there? What's your role? Who are you?
Yeah.
How are you going to show up?
Yeah.
Who am I here? What's my role?
Yeah.
And what are my possible options? And having that in check. And that's personal development, that is experience, that is, experience if you reflect on it. Not if it becomes an automatic thing. But that's develop themselves. And I think the team, at a certain way, if it works well, I also see it as an identity.
Yeah.
As a leader. The team is also a leader identity.
Yeah.
So it's a dance. It is, sometimes they ask me, what is it now, the leader or the team? It's the dance.
It's the dance. Yeah.
The team is the context where the leaders can come up, show up and lead. The leader, as a way, is also the context in which then his operational team or the people that he's working with can or cannot move as context setter then.
Yeah. Well, the know thyself, it always sounds easier said than done. So what hurdles do you see there? Because from my personal experience, very often I encounter people that have already built a very successful career, that have really great positions, but that feel that there's too much at stake to really know thyself and to turn inwards to actually ask themselves these questions.
Yeah.
So how is your experience with that?
then we are in the individual coaching. Huh?
Yeah.
And I see that often there people come with a certain reluctance because, I have no problem. And that at a certain point, then it does good to be seen, to be heard, to reflect, to take time.
With that individual.
Yeah. Now, in general, if I work with the executive team, I work with the CEO to prepare the workshop, the journey, the work, and then I work with the team as one.
Yeah.
And then I rarely, I never then go coaching one person in the team.
Okay.
Then I refer.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I'm on too many places.
Indeed.
So I work with the CEO, and then the team is an identity.
Yeah.
And I work with what they do together with
everyone involved.
With everyone involved.
Okay.
And then at the end, I close with the CEO.
Yeah.
And we can go on and on and on if we have more journeys. But it's always that dynamic.
Yeah.
But sometimes I just work with leaders, and then I do not work with the team.
Okay. Yeah.
And then, know your past also. Know your family history. You know that I'm good in family trees.
Very much. No, but because you talk a lot about that identity, both of the individual as a team, are there any, for people that are interested in it, any books you could recommend on that, or aspects that you believe are, if you want to know more about that concept of identity, that people should look into?
What is, if you say working identity, there is Herminia Ibarra, who wrote a book, Working Identity.
Okay.
Unconventional ways to reinvent your career. But that is more another question as what you raised. That it's more
individual.
Like if you want to shift, how then you can take this? She's fun.
Okay.
I'll come back to that. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Because now lots goes through.
A lot of things go through.
Yeah.
All right, good.
But if you said working identity, that's the title of a book, just
Yeah. Okay, super interesting. So we talked about the challenges, also about the challenges of the individual leaders of such executive teams. You also said executive teams versus the leaders. Where does it go wrong the most?
Yeah, that's the dance.
That's the dance?
For example, now I'm working in a few contexts on CEO transition.
Okay.
Well, all top people, the CEOs, in all the cases of CEO transition that I now have, they come in bunches, are top leaders. The incoming, so the one that leaves, the incoming CEOs, top. And still, we put a lot of energy and time and space for the transition. Because the new incoming CEO needs to, they all come again in a forming phase. They have to sniffle, to get to know each other. And that requires, it's not because they're a top team and a top leader that it will evident that they just dance together.
Yeah.
So, and then really taking the time for rituals. And it's not that we put incense sticks in our ears, but rituals is about taking time to acknowledge, to recognize what has been done, what's behind, to thank, to literally pass on I'd say talking stick, leading stick. We organize it that the old CEO then transfers to the new one, leaves the room, that people see his back, and see him going out, leave the room, that they can just see it, he's gone,
and accept it,
and then like support it with the experience, and then the new CEO has to maybe he'll change things. It's not just a new head on the same function. It's another person. And then we really spent time for making the dance work. And at a sudden, the whole team comes in a new phase of group dynamic. They may have been rather performing a little an oiled machine. And now they are in a forming phase again. The puzzle has to be reshaped. And it may have another color. Sometimes we work with their place anchors, like taking another office, another seat, or at least redecorate the thing. I had it in an organization where a very fine person was going to retire, and he was followed up by a lady CEO who was younger, and she started with redecorating the whole office, and it was really crucial to do. With a glass door rather than in a closed wooden door, with open windows, more open, another atmosphere. So she redecorated really.
Okay, to show, to give a signal, it's going to be different now.
And not like it's going to be different, but I'm another person, and we have to restart the dance.
That's good, because indeed sometimes people go too fast, thinking, okay, but it's about the numbers, and it's by focusing on what's tangible, and they forget that the intangible thing can be really an accelerator or a tremendous blocker in these contexts where it needs to go fast, where there's a lot at stake. There often the intangible glue is what makes it really work or not.
In big organizations, it often happens that, well, not at the exec team level, but it often happens that people say, oh yeah, my boss retired, I'm going to get a new boss, I'll see it in your chart, I haven't met him yet. I mean, whoa. And then it gives kind of fear, then people start making assumptions. So it is also, and that's also framing in that benevolence trust. The new person has to really express his intentions. What, who am I? You can know me, and what is my intention? Especially when you start doing things differently. Give your attention along. Because otherwise everyone will start making assumptions, and in general, when the assumptions are going from bottom to up,
they're bad.
It's not always good news.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a 360 review. In general, the bottom up is the moment to
vent.
To vent, or to think, yeah, we don't know it. There is the power. There will be something. It will be something that we may not know. The guy maybe just have not thought of telling. They don't say anything. So just take time for that.
Okay. Is it different the other way around? So top to bottom, is there more assumption? I
always learned when we learned that was in the time that I took courses with Luc Sels, still at KU Leuven, that when you have a 360-degree feedback, for example, that in general from the top to the bottom, you are more tended to assume good intent and say, yeah, it was maybe not well understood. Maybe the competence is not there yet. Maybe there is still something to learn. We'll talk about it. And then more going like learning, communication. But if you are at the bottom and you see the top, there is a lot that you do not see. There is the power also. There are the decisions that impact you, but you don't know what is going to happen. There's a little bit sometimes fear or the unpredictable. So you have lots of more responsibility if you're on the top to be aware of that and take it into account.
Yeah, and there's more criticism, the bottom to up, because very often people also think, but is it really that difficult? And you're paid much more, and that's something that I hear very often, that people are very critical then for the top because they are paid more.
That can also happen, for that. Yeah.
All right. So that's something.
That's something to be aware. You have to go first. If you're in the top, don't wait for people always to come, but go ahead with your intent.
Yeah. All right. Okay.
What are the results you strive for? What do you see in so many in such and such years? Communicate that.
Yeah.
They say that's one of the leadership thoughts of Koen Marischal and Jesse Segers. Talk your walk.
Talk your walk. Yeah.
Tell what you are doing.
Yeah.
Sometimes they say walk your talk. Yeah, if you can just so visionary predict what you're going to do and then walk it clear, do so. But in this complexity in general, you have to adapt.
Yeah.
And then you said something, you said you go for a result, and then people see you do things that may be a little bit weird, but just tell about the process.
Mm-hmm.
I think process communication is more important even.
Okay. Can you tell what is process communication for people that don't know it yet?
Process communication is communicating on the process, on the walk, on what is happening, on what you're doing.
Yeah. Can you give an example?
Yeah, you strive for a result, and at a certain the road seems clear, and at a certain point you have a hurdle, and you have to step back because, for example, legislation turned out to forbid something that you had maybe not taken into account, and then if you had make a mistake, then you just say so. You say, "Oh, we had not."
Foreseen this
in the sense of we did not know, or it was new. It's a new element. That's process communication.
Yeah.
If you're, I go to Paris quite often with now it's the Eurostar, and then sometimes it stops in the middle of the field, and then they say, "Ding dong, the train is stopped in the field." Yeah. You see it. That's process communication. We come back to you in 5 minutes because we're working on finding what's happening. That's process communication.
Okay.
What they did before, the train stopped. Many leaders do that. The train stops. They thought, oh my God, the train has stopped. Now we have to find out because we have to know what happened and we have to give the solution communication when we speak to the people.
Yeah.
And the people were waiting and they were working so hard to find a solution and to be able to say, oh, you may have seen that we were standing still, but we have solved it. And now we can proceed.
Yeah.
Well,
people are angry. People are impatient. People don't understand.
So as from the moment that there is something that doesn't go, the less that you can foresee or the less that it's predictable, the more you have to communicate, in fact.
Yeah. So even if it's as obvious as the train has stopped.
The train has stopped. We are here with a situation. We don't know exactly what's happened, but we're equipped. We have the competence to check, and we work on it, and we have the intent to start again as quickly as possible, and we still go direction of Paris to Paris. That doesn't change. And now we're going to see how this hurdle, and we come back to you in 5 minutes with news. And if you have then the news to say that you haven't found it yet, then that's the process communication.
Okay, so 5 minutes later, again, you say the same thing. You didn't find it yet, but you continue
we keep
the
searching.
thing.
And then at a certain point, you give, ladies and gentlemen, the train is going to depart.
Yeah.
Now, what is often a sabotage or I don't know whether it's sabotage, but sabotage sentences in your head then that make that you can, for example, not speak to the people when the train is standing still, because first you have to solve it. You have to show that you solved it, and then you can communicate.
Mm-hmm. That's something you see a lot.
So process communication is very important.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good.
On the process, on the walk.
On the walk. And typically people also
assume
that people know. Okay, people know that we're standing still.
Obvious.
So why should we say that? But that's really a big mistake, because you want people to show that you acknowledge them and that you know that they're there, and to explain that something is happening, you know? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
What are other concrete things that executive teams or executive leaders can spot within themselves or within the teams to know, okay, we're maybe not using our full potential? Like very concretely, what do you see them do? What do you hear?
Yeah.
Types of behavior?
Yeah. I would say individually and as a team, almost each time that you're stuck in a pattern.
A pattern.
Yeah. If you see that something is coming back and over repeating again.
You can already predict what this person is going to say and how this person is going to react to it. Yeah, that's a pattern.
If your meetings are like that,
very recognizable for many, I think.
Yeah, it's like the romantic comedy. You read it in the papers and you know, oh, it's going to be the romance and the breakup, and then they run to the airport and say, I love you. And then if this is like the script of your meetings that you know, Jan is going to say this, and then John is going to be against, and Lisa will come. So, or we take a decision, and then they will execute, and then afterwards we do the follow-up in the meeting, and we say, oh, how come? Where have we gone?
Or
so
a person comes and change it up.
There is a pattern that is repeating, and that you guide like going in circles.
Okay.
And that can have many manifestations. It can be two people always in a fight.
Yeah.
And then I say then if John and Tim are always arguing because John has 2 pencils and Tim has 3 pencils, it is not about the pencils.
Okay.
Then there is something, and the pencil is then the surface at the drama in the situation. He says, she says.
Yeah.
And there is something underneath.
Yeah.
About not being recognized, about previous stories that not have been solved, the kind of rancune that stays. But then you have to go and look what's under the table, under the surface. And that is like what does the system show and what doesn't the system show?
Yeah.
It can be like a team that has a scapegoat. Okay. Someone is scapegoated. Some teams need a scapegoat. It's in the pattern.
And how come?
Someone to blame.
Someone to blame.
Yeah. Someone to blame. And someone is always the one who is not functioning. And what we then sometimes see is that if you replace the person by another person, then either that becomes a scapegoat or someone else will take the role of the scapegoat.
Okay.
Or, get to the role of scapegoat.
Yeah.
So then you can rather ask, what is the pattern of our working together?
Mm-hmm.
That in that pattern, apparently we include that we have to blame someone.
Yeah.
And then not look at each other, for example. You can have this in family businesses.
Okay.
In family businesses.
That's complex because there's the family and the business part.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Because the genogram, the bloodline, prevails. Yeah. The org chart.
The org chart. It's confusing in the identity as well. You cannot undo the blood chart.
No, you cannot undo the blood chart. And then you keep patterns like the older
sibling.
The older sibling bossing the younger while maybe she's the CEO or something. Yeah. Also in that case, but that's another topic, that's another podcast, that is work with families then. Mm-hmm. So then you work with the families. But if these are in the executive teams,
you need to really take that into account.
You really have to take that into account, and sometimes also do work with the family. Because these are some very strong patterns sometimes. Yeah. But you can see patterns in startups.
Mm-hmm. And one I see often is people getting late. It's something really small, but if a person or people are always late, it's also something to really look into, because it also means that something's wrong in terms of the commitment, or that something is up, something needs to be looked at. Yeah, very, very simple. Yeah.
And that's not necessarily just that person having a bad time planning. That's what you say. Yeah. It's more like, how do we do this to always, for example, never end our agenda.
or never end with a decision.
Yeah.
Or indeed one person always having the one to speak up, whereas the rest stays silent or just nods.
Yeah.
Okay, so these are things to really be aware of and to look for, to see, okay, how functional are we, and how much are we using our potential as a team?
Yeah, and sometimes you really have to look into your past, in the past of the team. Yeah, the team and the organization.
Yeah.
Because sometimes the reasons for patterns can be in past histories.
Okay.
Like, for example, you have organizations where there is a kind of, I call it chaise éjectable. How do you say it in English? The jump seat in the plane, like chuck. It ejects the pilot.
Yeah.
And you have, for example, in an organization, a chair, a position where everyone fails.
Okay.
And then it's strange because it's good hiring, good recruiting, and then top people put there in that context, in that situation, and at a sudden it doesn't work. And then it can be interesting to see, like, what happened with this position over time. And then you can sometimes find that quite a time ago, there was an exit that was brutal, and that, for example, people are still loyal, and there has not been recognition or grief or excuses.
Yeah.
Huh?
For that position or that person that
for,
has been...
For what happened to that person. Yeah. Sometimes it can be important that someone who was not there, who has nothing to do with it, but who has the final now responsibility over the organization, can express an excuse for something that happened at a certain point, and that people can say, okay, it's recognized now.
Yeah. Okay.
Because sometimes it's about loyalties to prior people. So, for example, loyalties also to founders.
Yeah. Huh? Yeah, indeed. If founders...
Whoa. Yeah. In startups, you can see that.
Yeah. Isn't it the founder's dilemma? One of the...
Yeah. In startups, you can see that the founders, you have it at several levels in the organization. I mean, not levels, but periods of time.
Okay.
In the beginning, you have that startup that where the founders are like a nice club of 2-3 people, and they make their decisions at the ping pong table, and they have control over everything. And then it grows and grows and grows, and at a certain point they cannot put their arms around everything anymore.
No, even though they maybe want to.
Yeah. And then they need complete other ways of functioning, and then new identities also, like stick to more context setting and stick to another role. No less, but decide more at the top level. But then as the organization goes further, and if it's often also if it's a family business, at a certain point, the founder has to be able to let go and to get out of the business, retire, without harming. In family business, you sometimes see it that the founder rather takes the business along
to the grave,
than letting go and letting it internationalize, have its own identity. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. All right.
But so the history is important. Yeah. And histories, because everyone then has had his own subjective experience of what happened. So sometimes we make timelines.
Yeah.
And then it's a timeline of what happened in the world, what happened in the organization, what happened in divisions, what happened in your life.
Yeah.
So that it comes together.
All right.
That we can have sense making together. Yeah. What are we now striving for together? And what do we honor and let go?
Okay. I can imagine that these type of exercises, it's difficult to just do it on your own as an executive team. So if you would have to give tips to the executive teams or executive leaders that are listening right now, what are things that they can do themselves in order to really activate their full potential, or really make sure that they become this more cohesive, aligned identity that dare to speak truth to each other and that can really steer the organization through complexities? What tips do you have for them? What can they do themselves? And you can also give tips on where they should ask for advice, of course.
Yeah, I think we have said a lot already. Yeah, keep your balance, know yourself, keep your balance, develop as a person.
Yeah.
Reach out also to people that you can share with, that you have social support.
Yeah.
Social support and also blunt feedback.
Yeah, okay. Is that then rather within the organization or outside?
I think both. You cannot discuss maybe everything within, but you can create kind of islands of sanity. But there is no, it's no secret that so many CEOs are in biking clubs, because then they are with the baker and with all people that say, hey, now get out of the way, and you just with your peers from school, with your siblings, people that are keeping you
grounded.
Sometimes spouses do that.
Yeah.
To keep them on the ground and to have reality checks and balance.
Yeah.
And again, know yourself, know your history, know your past. Reach out, find see your patterns, see patterns in the organization, and it can be big. Like for example, in hospitals, you see that you have always a dance between three, between the administrative part of the hospital. That's the organization, the doctors, the medicals, the care. Depending on who's the CEO, the focus may be different.
Yeah.
If you work in context for security, it all has to be like more, it's urgent, it has to go quickly. So see also the patterns of your business. In banks, they solve a lot with throwing money to it, with money.
Yeah.
So also know yourself is also for an organization, know your core. Because often we tend to solve things or to be stuck in that what is our core.
Yeah.
To also internally get stuck with my supervisor in Paris for systemic work once gave an example, and I don't know whether it's true or real or whether he did it for didactical reasons, but he talked about a company that sold the elevators.
Yeah.
And where it was almost impossible to speak about transversal moves.
Okay.
And I thought this is an example that I can retain to see how you can be stuck in your core.
In your core.
So know yourself is also know your sector. What is it what we do?
Yeah, and what's typical to that, and maybe how is it blocking us?
What's typical to my family that I'm raised in? What did my parents say? It has to be hard work and difficult, or if it causes too much trouble to get it, then it is not okay. Things go in flow.
Yeah.
How were you raised, with difficult or with flow?
Yeah, indeed.
And this is
and make it then discussable within your team, or
the core is when things can be discussed, then they can be handled. So often in the teams, what can we do is there, for example, that's an exercise I do with them, but you can do it yourself.
Yeah.
You make a flip chart and you put it in 3 columns, and you say what is easy for us to talk about together, what is difficult, and what are our taboos.
Okay.
And you start filling it up. What's easy to talk about? What is difficult? What are taboos?
Yeah.
What are the elephants in the room? What is under the table? What can we not discuss?
Yeah.
Already discussing that it is not able to discuss it can create space.
Yeah.
Or, for example, if you never finish...
And so to go back to that exercise, and for people listening, is it then good to just do it themselves, or to still have someone external
It is very,
it?
very difficult to participate in an exercise that you facilitate.
Okay.
So either you just give the instruction, you make the flip charts, and you go stand in a group, and you're just one member of the group, and then you participate.
Yeah.
But it's difficult to do it yourself. But
Okay.
listing what are the things that we cannot talk about easily or difficult already creates space. Or, for example, if you never stick to a decision, take a flip chart and write down what are the 14 magnificent strategies that we use to never stick to a decision.
Okay.
And
to
then
really put the spotlight
denunciate,
on...
auto-denunciation.
Yeah.
Not spending hours and hours on blaming and saying how it should be, but look at what you do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And try to understand what it brings you.
Okay. Yeah.
How do we do this? What we do, in fact.
Yeah. Yeah, and what it brings you, that's an important one, because it's also
what's the win?
In coaching. What's the win?
What are we not wanting to lose? And how can we make sure that that value is in a certain way guaranteed?
Yeah.
Because if you can't guarantee that, it will be very, very difficult.
Yeah. Yeah.
If the loss is too big.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. Yeah, and it's really a mind shift, because, for example, people that are always blaming on, for example, other people that always throw decisions off board and change everything, by really looking at what the benefits are, it really just shifts your mindset, and it creates more... it just creates more comprehension to why things happen from a broader point of view. And if you then have more comprehension, you have the ability to think along and to indeed be a part then of that team and to think in the same direction from a good intent. So I really love that one, to
discuss it and put it there. Sometimes I end the workshop with what will be our magnificent strategies to make sure that at the next workshop we haven't
done anything
of the whole plan that we made.
Voilà. Yeah, that's a good ending.
And then it becomes like, lighter to discuss it also.
Indeed.
Make it lighter also. Okay. Make it normal.
Yeah. So if you're...
It's what you do. So
it's what you do.
So make it normal.
So dare to look... Actually, dare to speak your truth about what's happening, but with a lightness and with a curiosity to understand.
No blame, judgment, but just, that's weird.
Voilà.
How do we do this? Again. Yeah.
All right. Interesting. Good. Anything else you want to share in terms of advice or tips about these executive teams or executive leaders, or to these executive leaders that are listening right now, before we go to the final and juicy part?
I think we've had a lot. Maybe I must have forgotten quite a lot, but
I think so too. And
let it be.
And all the references to the books and the movie that you explained in the beginning.
Yeah, and I can give a list of maybe you can share it then on your.
Yes, we will add it to the end in the show notes. We will add it.
Yeah.
Okay, then we're at the end. So at the end, I always like to ask about the person that I'm talking to, how they sabotaged themselves or maybe blocked really standing in their full potential. So if you look back 10 or 15 years ago, what self-sabotage did you do back then that you don't do anymore today?
Don't do anymore today, that would be really wonderful. I think what I have quite evolved in, if I may say so, and you can eventually say yes or no if it is true, but it's the be here now.
Be here now.
Yeah. So I now try much more than I have been able to do that many years ago. When I'm here, I'm here.
Yeah.
And then that's it.
Yeah.
Now, of course, if you are, I worked in an organization in a Big Four, in consultancy, raising 3 children, in a whole other life atmosphere. Then there was much more balls to keep in the air. And then I think I might often have been physically present, and not present. So that's that question: how do you show up? Is your body here and your mind is thinking ahead and I should have done this, I could still do that, multitasking. That I really try to not to do anymore.
Okay. And because I think a lot of people recognize themselves in it, to be physically here but not mentally, or how did you do that? Like, what was the process?
I think growing older, but that will not be a sufficient answer for you. Also, other life stages, maybe. I would tend to say feedback, but that's not it. You know, when I change really something that is not working, when I really feel the consequence.
The bad consequence.
Yeah. And when I really feel it and have something that it can be like a lightning. What am I doing?
Yeah.
I'm not going to do this anymore.
Yeah. That you
It has to come from,
Yeah.
And then it can even go with anger. When I'm angry, for example, about a consequence or something that didn't go well, then anger for me, I think it's a wonderful emotion.
Yeah.
I have more easier also access to anger than, for example, sadness.
Yeah.
Because it puts movement.
Yeah.
And then it can give these kinds of triggers that really are, now it's finished. Now I change it.
Yeah. The lightning bulb.
Yeah. But sometimes also an insight. I remember I smoked a lot when I was young. I really smoked a lot, and you could still smoke on offices. You could smoke just at your desk. And I was pregnant, and we were with friends at the coast. And in that apartment of those friends, you could not smoke, which was unusual because in that time you could smoke everywhere.
Yeah.
And I went out to the beach and I lighted a cigarette. And I was standing there and I said, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Go in the fresh air outside to smoke, and I'm pregnant. And I did it. I extinguished it and I never smoked again.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's like, toink.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's for you.
Yeah. That's the same with the be here now. And they can tell you, and I think you have to feel it. But for me, it works like that.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to make that inner conclusion.
And what I do, then it's like, poink.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Good.
And other things when I don't change it, like throwing those stones rather than small stones, those big blocks into the water, then it's because it still brings me too much. Clients sometimes choose me for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a big value because not a lot of people, first of all, see it as clearly what the block is. I think that's really one of your main strengths, that you see so quickly, so clearly how it's not in flow, or where it goes wrong, like what the root cause is of the blur, or
sometimes.
And so indeed it's so is that then something, if I would ask you this question in 20 years again, that you would want to learn how to polish it more? Or?
Maybe yes, polish, that's the word.
Polish.
It may still be there, right? It may still be but polished. That's the word.
Okay, good.
Take it along. Thank you. That's really a good metaphor.
Yeah, to polish it.
Rather than the rock, a polished. Yeah.
Something.
Yeah.
Any plans already on how you're going to do that?
Rehearse,
right? You can do tryouts.
I have to do something with then a conviction, I think. Because why do I throw those blocks? Because once I have seen what is there, it is so clear. And then I really have to understand that my insight does not help you.
Yet.
Yours does.
Yeah.
But I think, yes, you're smart. We just discussed it.
Yeah.
And there is so much at stake. And that is sometimes what's pushing me. I see that there is so much at stake in society, with people working in the organization. I think there is I experience a kind of urgency for the world.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I can get really impatient and say, hey guys, there is so much work to do.
Yeah.
So much still time and work to do before we all develop at a level where we can really have impact on the world together.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because Jesse Segers, that you also quoted earlier, in a talk that I once saw him give, a workshop, he said that time in itself is transformative.
Yes,
So
of course. Yeah.
even if you don't
Yeah.
throw that rock, time in itself will transform
that's
the
true.
situation.
Yeah.
And maybe that's something that can...
Yeah. We'll discuss about it at Ginkgo.
All right, great.
Yeah.
All right, we're at the end of this conversation. It's full of learnings. I didn't expect anything less, but I really want to thank you for sharing all of this with me, with everyone listening in today. And I'm 100% sure that we will have a lot of post discussions after this. In the show notes, I will add all the books and the extra recommendations that you will provide me with, as well as with your contact information if people want to know more. But is there anything else you want to say, a last final word to me or to the speakers?
Yes, thank you for the polished rock.
All right, good. Maybe I can give you a polished rock with it later on. Okay, great. And for the listeners out there, if you're an executive leader, or if you know an executive leader that might benefit from listening to this episode, share it with them. And together we create a world where everyone wakes up and dares to be great. See you in the next one. Bye.